The British Grand Prix is finally upon us, and just in time, Tim has caught a cold. You know, it's just perfect timing for a guy that's got to spend 12 hours a day at the track because, Tim, you're actually there, which is super cool. And, of course, you have to be sick. Like, you went through an airport. It has to be that way.
Oh, dude, like, I wore my mask and everything. Like, I wear, the N95s that, we were wearing during the pandemic or whatever.
Yeah, man, those were worth, like, millions of dollars for a while there.
Yeah, big time. So, like, we have a stash of them at home, and, like, I use them when I go into airports and, like, when I fly.
Yep.
And I won't use them any time else, but I do use them at those points because there's such a high trafficked area, people coming in from so many different places, and then the plane's, like, recycled air and everything, and I'm like, oh, no, I forget it. I just throw this thing on. Anyways, I ended up getting sick anyways, so.
Of course. Listen, it can't be easy, but it is the British Grand Prix, and it's exciting, and there's a lot to talk about. We want to talk about Max and Lando making up. I know there was a lot of angry Max Verstappen fans in our comments, which is, I don't often see happy Max Verstappen fans in any comment section, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's always defend, get very angry. And then Lando fans seem to be the ones that are the happy ones, but they were not happy last week. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Oliver Bearman obviously becoming a member of the Haas F1 team on a multi-year deal. But the first thing I want to talk about, Tim, is you sat down with the man, Toto Wolff.
I did.
And you talked to him, and this is a feature you did for TSN. You talked to him about, a few things, but specifically that second seat at Mercedes that we all think at this point in the season is going to Kimi Antonelli. So tell me about it. How was it?
It was great. I mean, like, I have known Toto for like quite a while. The two of us think we raced against each other, but we're still not sure yet. We're still.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it would have been the FIA GT Championship. And like,
is there any way to look that up? Is there like a database?
Well, we were trying to like find. We were trying to find the FIA GT Championship database, but like it doesn't exist anymore. I don't even know what the series is called now because it's changed names over so many years. But regardless of that, I mean, yeah, I've chatted with him quite often. It was good. I mean, I like talking with Toto because he's very to the point. He's honest, blunt, and like I respect that. Like he doesn't really give me the whole PR speak. Like he tells me what he's thinking. And he was great. Like I think a big thing for him, Adam, is just the decision on whether or not to put such a young driver in the seat who like may not be ready. And then what happens? Like what happens to that driver if they're not ready, right? You kind of break their confidence. So I think for him, it's just trying to like understand if he's going to be ready and whether or not he wants to risk throwing him into the seat because, he needs to make a decision, he was saying, by the time autumn reaches. So we're talking we're probably talking September, I would say. He's probably going to be looking at making a decision on that, on that seat, the second seat. So, it was good talking to him, good to get his perspective, good to like hear what he's thinking. I mean, like he still talks about Verstappen, right? Like,
yeah,
like he wants Max at the team. Like I just think he does. I mean, he's said it before. He's been pretty open about that. It all just comes down to when, right? I mean, like obviously Max he has confirmed like he will be back at Red Bull for next season, but yeah, like we've talked about before, Adam, I think like if Max doesn't see 2026 engine development at Red Bull going smoothly, then he may look for greener pastures elsewhere,
So, okay, so let me understand this from Toto's perspective because I'm looking at the F2 standings. Kimi Antonelli is currently ninth, and for my part, I look at that and I go, if you're gonna wait on Max for a year. And I don't expect 2025 to be, listen, they could still win something in 2025. They have George Russell. Why not go get Valtteri Bottas for a year and let Kimi Antonelli season again in the, in Formula 2, let him dominate. or see if he can, and then see if you're going to get Max, and then you have to make a tough decision. But that's a really good decision to have to make. Do I get all-star rookie or all-star Formula One multiple-time champion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. I think that's not a bad idea either. I mean, all signs do point to, Kimi being in that seat for next season. He is getting a lot of mileage. Like, he's getting a lot of testing at him in the last 2022's car. Toto did put him in I believe it was a 2021 car he threw him into, or 2020. Okay. I can't remember which one it was, but he basically said to me, I want to put him in something good before I put him in something shit. And so that's how he basically referred to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the more mileage he can get under his belt, then the better off, he's going to be when he enters F1, and then they're obviously going to evaluate what he's going to be doing, obviously, during those testing sessions. So that's why they're so crucial for him to have. If he didn't have that, then the chances of him getting that seat at Mercedes are, I don't know. That's
none. Yeah. Hey, I've got a question for you. If a car's been sitting for 3 or 4 years, the 21 car, the 2020 car, how much time do you think it takes the mechanics back at the factory to get it up and going? How do you source tires if they've changed in that time? How do they do all that?
Well, they would use the current tires that are going right now, right? Getting an old car up and running is not too difficult. We see it a lot with Ferrari's Corsa Cliente, which is a lot of the older F1 cars being pulled out of the museum, or customer cars who have bought F1 cars and they want to take them to the track. And then mechanics, obviously, it's not that big of a deal to get those cars ready and get them onto the track. So it's not a huge issue for them to do that. Obviously the big issues, right, Adam, are developing a brand new race car. Those are the challenges. Those are the hard things that these teams really have to do, is building and progressing a new car.
Yeah.
I was at Aston Martin's factory today. So they had an open house for media, and so they gave me an invite. So I showed up, and that they're building, they have their new state-of-the-art factory that's already running, but they've also built 2 separate buildings on beside it, and it's all connected. It's about, I think it's around 400 to 500 meters worth of hallway, and offices and stuff. It's an open concept where you can go and just talk to anybody, have breakout chats and all that stuff. They have breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff, and the amount of infrastructure that's gone into that place is it's unbelievable. It's going to be, it will be the pinnacle for F1. It'll be the pinnacle for F1 compounds.
Really?
For sure. 100%. Everything in it is state of the art. Their sim room is 360 degree, flat screen. That's just massive, dude. Just huge. They have a running track there outside. They have, weight room, gyms. They have restaurants in there. They have physio rooms for people who need a massage or whatever. Everyone in there is taken care of. It's great. And to see how much work goes into building a part, building a component, you can go in there and see, because a lot of the machines are all automated now, so it's all robotics and stuff, building things, and you're literally sitting there watching a robot build something, and you're just oh my god, that's absolutely incredible. And then we didn't get to see the fully developed model room, and so when they create models, full scale models of car parts and everything, and then they put them into the wind tunnel to see if they work, they have 3 separate stages, so 3 separate rooms that the models go through. So the crew works on them in room 1, then they advance them to room 2, and another crew in there working on them in room 2. Then they advance them to room 3, where these big robotic arms come down, pick the model up, spin it around, and they can look underneath it. They can bolt things on under it, and then it goes straight into the wind tunnel. And
right.
It was amazing. So it's pretty cool, dude. It's really cool. But like, anyways, advancing the technology, advancing the car, like those are the hard parts, right?
Right.
Like,
So
just
firing up an old one's easy.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
That's easy for them to do.
Now, one of the things we clipped out our conversation about Lando and Max on the SDPN YouTube channel, and it did some numbers because people had things to say on both sides, and I think, Tim, when we talk about Lando, when we talk about Max, we're talking about two guys that everybody in the paddock expects to be racing each other for the top spots for the next couple of years, right? McLaren's got a great car. Red Bull's had a great car. We don't know what 2026 looks like, but the assumption is that, these two are among the best drivers on the grid. Some people, I think a lot of people would want to throw Charles Leclerc in there. Some others would like to throw George Russell in there. I think Ferrari's taken a step back. Mercedes is still trying to catch up. So it's these two, and they're good friends. And the way that it happened at the Red Bull Ring, Lando was knocked out of the race. Max was knocked down in the race. They apparently said, okay, let's not talk until we've slept on this. And afterwards, on Monday morning, they were able to talk. Do you know what was exchanged?
Yes. So you're right about the fact that they wanted to cool down before they had a conversation. That was Max's idea.
It's a good idea.
It was to make sure, It would make sure that they were calm before they had a discussion. That tells me like one thing, that they're actually, well, that he is actually like invested in the friendship.
Yes.
And we're not used to this, Adam. Like drivers, teammates, they're teammates, but they're not friends.
Right.
And seldomly do we have like friendships between drivers. It's very seldom. And rarely do you ever really see it. And if you do see it, usually it ends up in a falling out. And this one feels a lot different. Like they really they like each other. Like they're good friends. And I don't think for Max he wants to lose that. It was Max who called Lando on Monday, and they chatted about what happened, obviously, on the Sunday. Mm-hmm. And Lando wasn't expecting Max to be apologetic for what had happened. He basically said he was 99% fine with everything that went down, but there was a 1% that he wasn't fine. And he wouldn't really elaborate on what that 1% was, but I think we can all take a guess as to what that was. Mm-hmm. And then for for Max, it was basically just kind of like explaining like this is like the type of like he's an aggressive driver, and he's not going to back down, and nor should he. He should be aggressive. For sure. Like, I mean, the great champions they push the boundaries, they push the limits of things, right? That's what they do. And I wouldn't expect anything else from Verstappen on that front. And that's totally fine. And I'm good with that. I think, again, it's the rules of engagement that we never got into it, but I would like to know, like, if they had that conversation, because that's what's going to dictate everything moving forward, dude, is the rules of engagement. That's exactly what it's going to be. But Max said that next time they're racing hard against each other, they both agreed they're going to push each other flat out. So,
well, and from what we understand from the conversation too, they also may have agreed that they both enjoyed the battle after having a chance to think about it.
Yeah, they did. And I think there were some things, obviously, Lando didn't really like. I have a feeling it's that lap 55 where Verstappen just did that massive fade over to the right, definitely moving in the braking zone, like just a massive move. And I think that may be one of the things that he probably doesn't really care much for. But yeah, I mean, it was, it was interesting to hear from Lando after he had calmed down. I will be interested to see if it like affects him at all, like on track when they race each other again, because chances are this weekend, Adam, it's going to be a tight affair at the front. And we're probably going to be talking about Lando and Max fighting for a win again this weekend. So,
and
it'll be interesting to see how he handles it.
This is very publicly McLaren's home track. This is a British driver. This matters.
Big time.
And it's a huge. I mean, he finished second last year, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a big deal then, right? It's for British drivers. Silverstone obviously it holds an even more special place. And I look at what happened. I mean, you know, last week was Red Bull's home race. This week is McLaren's. McLaren, I think, as a team, as much as they're young and they're fun to root for, at a certain point, they're going to have to learn how to race kind of like a bear, right?
Yeah.
Like Red Bull is not afraid to do whatever the hell they need to do. It's been so long since McLaren were up here, really, truly. Probably since the like Vodafone, Ron Dennis, Lewis Hamilton era, that there aren't many people left at the team who remember what that was like. Who would have been there. And there's a championship pedigree that builds within a team. And it only builds when you take some bumps and bruises, right? And I look at Red Bull, they took a lot of bumps and bruises on their way up through Mercedes, right? Years and years and years of trying to figure out how to beat Mercedes with a smaller budget. And Ferrari too, right? Ferrari had a couple of years there where Vettel should have probably won a championship in there somewhere. And I look at McLaren and I go, this is a team that, like Max, when I look back on it, yes, absolutely, I think Max was in the wrong. But that's also how Max has always raced. And it's the FIA seems to be okay with it. So if that's what it's going to take, McLaren needs to figure that out. They need to be the ones who are not like whining to the officials after the race. They need to be the ones winning the race and then daring the officials to take it away from them. Because that's what Red Bull does. Yeah. Right? I dare you. I dare you to take this back.
Yeah, very aggressive, right, Adam? They're very aggressive in the way they approach everything. Pit stops, racing tactics, strategies, very aggressive in strategies, actually. They're the most aggressive on the grid in that regard. But yeah, no, that Red Bull's definitely a team that always pushes the envelope in all facets of Formula One. And I respect that. The interesting thing, Adam, what you said there is, you know, about the stewards and making decisions and the racing. And you know what came up a lot today was drivers talking about just how much they're now being micromanaged in how they race.
Okay.
I think Carlos Sainz put it really well, where it's kind of like you just get so convoluted with so much stuff because, my front wing is beside his mirror, so that means it's my corner, or my right front wheel is just to the side of their left rear wheel, and so I'm not able to make a pass here, but my nose was in front, and he's got a point, and they all said this. Every driver said this. And they just went off on their own. I mean, Alonso went off too. Like at one point, it was great. But the fact is that what they're driving at is that they're just the rule book now is just so complex. There's just so much in it that the drivers are just like, I don't even know, like if this is going to be like where this is in the rule book. Like they, and they all have a point. Like if I remember back to like when I was racing back in my day, you made one move and that was it. That was all you could do. You made your one move to block. If someone was able to make something else work, then that's just the way it was. You couldn't move back. You knew you were going to get penalized immediately. You would get a penalty for that. And it was straightforward, simple that way, right? And if the two of you are side by side through a corner and you're battling, like you're battling for the position, who's going to lift out first. And if you crashed, you had a crash. That's how you sorted it out. And if you were passing someone and they were just a bit behind you and you were trying to exit the corner, but they're still kind of there, technically you're not in the wrong. So you just squeeze them out. And that's what I would do all the time. I would squeeze everybody out because you could do it. And that's fine. We're all good with that. And now it's like when you look at the F1 rule book for like rules of racing or whatever. It's crazy, man.
Well, and also remembering that these guys are making these decisions at a split second, right?
Well, like the other point. It's a perfect point. Yeah. 100%, man.
It's just like how could you possibly? You don't have time to actually think of the rules, and that's why I respect what Red Bull does, because they don't, and it benefits them, because ultimately the last thing the FIA wants to do is take a win away from somebody who stood on the podium. That's the last thing the FIA wants to do. So if I'm a McLaren strategist, I'm like, all right, well, if they're going to be bullies about it, we got to be bullies right back, and they have the reputation of being bullies. So why don't we use that to our advantage, get out ahead, make sure we win at all costs, and then dare the governing body to take it away from us. And I think that is the strategy I would go with, because that's what it's going to take. And by the way, like, again, people act like this Max Verstappen thing is new. Again, Michael Schumacher crashed his car to win points and win championships. This is not new. Drivers are crazy. You can't, if you're applying logic to a Formula One driver,
it's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. You don't get it, and it's okay that you don't get it. I don't get it, but I'm not a Formula One driver, and the stakes are crazy at that level. They're crazy. You're right at the peak, and you can fall. Yeah. So anyway, it's a great story. And Tim, isn't it wonderful that we're talking about rivalry between Red Bull and someone?
Yes.
Isn't that great?
Fantastic.
We haven't had a rivalry like this since Mercedes and Red Bull.
Yeah, that's right. No, this is great. I mean, I think once you got the shots fired from Andrea Stella at the end of Sunday's Grand Prix in Austria, then you knew something was on. Like, you knew you had something here. And I think it's exactly what F1 needs. I mean, granted, maybe some of it's been blown out of proportion. Mm-hmm. But is it being blown out of proportion just so it could be like stoked, so the fires could be stoked even more for later on?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But I mean, honestly, it's definitely something F1 needs. And I think also like the backstory just with the two of them, right? Being good friends, and it's like, oh, it's even juicier.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to say that the two people that have not made up are Christian Horner and Andrea Stella. I've never seen Andrea Stella speak like this, and this week talking about the fact that he just cannot reconcile, and I'm paraphrasing here, Christian Horner's comments that Lando was trying to, quote, start something. Mm-hmm. That rivalry, I mean, I miss Toto versus Christian. There isn't much of a rivalry when their cars aren't very good, or like when Mercedes can't match Red Bull.
Yeah, Stella just doesn't get that emotional, right, Adam?
Ever.
He's just very level-headed.
Yeah.
And he's very, what's the word I want to use? Basically, he thinks everything through. Like, you can see him thinking about what he wants to say because he wants it to have an impact, but he doesn't want it to be sprinkled with emotion. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I don't mind that, because sometimes he gets his point across in the best way, and it's so simple, right? And it makes the biggest impact. Like on the weekend, was he emotional last Sunday? No. Was he pissed? Maybe a little bit for sure, but did he have a point with what he said? Was it you should have nipped this in the bud a long time ago, but you didn't, and now we're here. Got a point.
Has a point. Yeah.
And it was and I didn't even think about it that way either during the moment. So, but he did. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's very good that way, but yeah, I don't think it'll ever be like Christian and Toto.
No, but you know what? I am looking forward to this, because Christian does like to throw barbs and Andrea doesn't. So I'm wondering how many barbs can Christian throw before Andrea reacts? Because that's when Christian has you. When he gets you to react.
Involved. Zach will just get him. Zach
will get involved. Yeah. Oh, because Zach's got no worries about that. None whatsoever. He's been taking shots at Red Bull all year. So yeah, I think I love this. I love the rivalries. I love that it goes all the way up to the managerial level. It's going to the fans. This is great. We do want to see some good racing though this weekend. And obviously, Tim, one of the things that we're going to know before we even get to the track is one of the Haas drivers is locked up for next year. He is a Ferrari junior driver, so this makes a lot of sense. Mick Schumacher did this as well, and unfortunately for Mick, the worst Haas car ever. Oliver Bearmann, who obviously finished 7th filling in for Carlos Sainz in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix earlier this year, is jumping into a car. I believe he's 19. And it's the sport as Eddie Jordan would envision it. Eddie Jordan always loves to talk about the fact that it should be a young man's sport. It should be very young. And he's like, why do we have people in their 40s still driving here? That's one man's interpretation. I kind of like having Alonso and Lewis, but Ollie Bearman, multi-year deal with Haas. What do you foresee going on here? Is this the guy that if everything goes well, when Lewis Hamilton retires, he's at Ferrari?
Yeah, this would be the guy who would take over from Lewis whenever he decides to leave Formula One. So putting him at Haas is probably the perfect place for him to learn and grow and mature. And then also on top of that, this is Io Komatsu really wanted him. Like if we go all the way back, and I said this on this podcast after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, actually. So those can go back and give that a listen. But I had literally said this guy's going to Haas, and the reason was because of his performance at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in that Ferrari at a track that's like very unforgiving. He makes a little bit of a mistake at him, and it's all over. Like there was so much pressure on his shoulders for that weekend to not make a mistake. I mean, the team was expecting him to make a mistake, but he put it on the line and pulled out a remarkable result. And right there, that was all that anyone needed to see to know that this guy was ready for Formula One. That was the track, the car.
He'd never driven the hybrid engine thing too, right? Like that was all new to him.
Well, he did a test. So he did a test in Mexico. So during the Mexico Grand Prix, because I interviewed him after, and I remember Io Komatsu telling me just how excited he was for him, because once he got done that session, that whole team was just so impressed with how well he had done. So Adam, looking at this kid's future, if he can perform, I mean, granted, like no one's expecting anything the first year, but his second year, if he's able to keep up with whomever his teammate's going to be or be better than them, then yeah, I mean, this is a driver that Ferrari has invested a lot of time and money into, like a lot. So they want him to take over for Lewis when he goes, and so obviously you have to bring him along in the right way. And I think going down the Haas is a perfect fit for him. Well,
and a lot of people complained when Mick Schumacher was there because obviously the car wasn't great, and that was on purpose. And Haas were saving money for the next year, and then Mick got a better car, but I think he and Gunther weren't.
Adam, because then you saw Mick was partnered up with Nikita Mazepin at that time, right? Come on, like that's not a driver at that moment that you could compare Mick to. No. It was when Kevin Magnussen got in the car, then you actually saw whoa, all right, Magnussen's blown Mick's doors off all season, and it's kind of you just got him out of F2, won a championship there. The team wasn't super impressed by him, and so he had to go. It's just did. And then you see Hülkenberg when Hülkenberg comes in, and Hülkenberg takes it to Magnussen. So then you have to wonder how many levels down was Mick? Yeah, because he was above Mazepin. Magnussen came in and thrashed him. But then Hülkenberg came in and thrashed Magnussen.
Yeah.
Right? And I think what this sort of tells you is just we don't appreciate the level of the young drivers that we have in Formula One right now. How good this young group of drivers are. Because it really is something special to see, a lot of these younger drivers now.
Right. And I think a lot of there's going to be people who are upset about the Mick Schumacher comment because he does have a legion of fans, but I
for sure.
I think you're absolutely right. And and that's the thing, right? But what's great about Bearman this time versus, what Schumacher had at Haas is this is a really competitive car, likely from day one. They seem to have got a good handle on the regulations. I don't know what 2026 is going to offer, but I would assume that, Haas is going to have a Ferrari engine. So that's a good start. What do you think about putting a driver in what is expected to be a midfield car in their rookie season. Is that a lot of pressure? Is that like what do we expect from that?
No, I don't think so. It's good. It allows them to make mistakes. It allows them to really evaluate just everything he can do. It allows them to evaluate what he needs to get better at. I just think it's a smart move to put like this goes back to our Kimi Antonelli discussion. It's like taking a driver and who's a rookie and then just throwing them in a top team and expecting them to like perform right away and all that pressure on their shoulders not to make mistakes doesn't really free them up to really drive the car the way they need to drive the car and get the performance that they need to get from the car. So it's better to take these drivers and put them at the back of the grid. Look at George Russell. Yeah. I mean, it was good for George to be in that Williams for as long as he was, even though there was 1 year he probably should have been moved up sooner, but Toto kept him at Williams for just another year. And now look at what George does. I mean, he's in such a zone right now. Like what Russell's doing at Mercedes at the moment is incredible. So it's good that they can do that. It's more difficult when you take a really young, inexperienced driver and put them in a top team. Like that's going to be hard for Kimi Antonelli, but for Ollie Bearman, I think he's going to be able to make his mistakes. There's not going to be a lot of pressure on his shoulders, so I think it's the perfect place for him to start.
Well, I think it's going to be very, very exciting to see a young guy on the grid. Are we any closer on Carlos Sainz? Do we know anything else?
No, he wouldn't talk about it today. He basically said, I'm done talking about it until he's like, you will all know when I've made my decision. Okay. And that was it. That's how he left it. There's a lot that we've talked about with Carlos and his decision, how important it is. And yeah, we don't need to go into that. That's on previous podcasts if people want to listen to it. I mean, he's got a big decision ahead of him. And it's not necessarily for next year. It's more along the lines, Adam, like we've discussed. His decision is based upon what happens in 2026.
Yeah. And that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Going to be an interesting one. Sure. Okay, so listen, Silverstone. Practices start tomorrow. Mm-hmm. What are we expecting from this track? Who are we expecting to do well? Who are we expecting to take a step back? I obviously think McLaren, Red Bull are a lock, but who's got the edge?
Yeah, I think McLaren, Red Bull. We'll see what happens with Ferrari. For some reason, like a few of the people think Mercedes is going to be pretty competitive here. Probably not like battling McLaren and Red Bull, but people think they're probably going to be the third fastest team. Ferrari's still working on getting its stuff together. They seem to understand what's wrong with their car and what they're doing wrong with it. And then from there on out, it's anybody's guess, Adam, as to what happens with Alpine. I mean, they've been looking really good lately. And then what about RB? They're both running mixed components for this weekend. Both of them are running new and old equipment on their cars. And then Aston Martin could be a tough weekend for them, man. I think they're going to struggle. I think Williams is going to struggle too. That's
funny because this is a track where Williams did, I think, well last year.
Yeah. Relatively well, it's a straight line speed they had, right? Yeah. They had good straight line speed. So here it's just so much different now, Adam. Like their car that they've got now, I mean, it's just, it's way different than what they were expecting, and they need to put upgrades on it. They need more downforce on the car.
That's pretty sad. How do you think Mercedes?
It is.
Let's zero in on Ferrari Mercedes for 3-4 here. Ferrari seems to have taken a few steps back, Tim. Are they bringing anything new?
Not this weekend. No upgrades this weekend. Red Bull will have upgrades this weekend. Max wouldn't elaborate what those upgrades are, so I don't really know. He was just saying, I hope they work. So that should tell you something.
Okay.
I think for Ferrari, they probably won't have another round of upgrades coming for a bit. It's big thing with them is what they're trying to understand is where they have the car in terms of its ride height, where they ride it on the track, in terms of how high or how low should it be to the ground for them to get performance, because they're still getting some porpoising or bumping. Carlos was telling us a bit about it. It was essentially as the car is going through a corner, high speed and long duration, like the corners in Silverstone here, for example, the car would bump. And so if the car is bumping up and down, then you're not getting the maximum performance out of it at that point, because the tires aren't gripping into the pavement for the whole way around the turn. So you're sort of losing those, fine hundredths, tenths of a second sort of deal because of that.
Right.
So they just need to figure out where to run the car. Mm-hmm. They're happy with the upgrade that they brought. Remember, they brought that big one to Imola?
Yep.
Well,
absolutely, I do.
They've confirmed that like it's doing what it's supposed to do. Like it is a step forward. It's for them trying to understand where to run it. And so that's their big issue right now, just trying to figure that part out. And I think it's one of those things like we always talk about with these cars. It's like the smallest little detail, running it in the certain sweet spot, and you unlock a ton of performance.
That is, and that has got to be both very exciting when you get it, but very frustrating when you don't for these teams.
Find it.
Yeah, and a race like this, obviously, it's one of those where there's a lot more eyeballs than just your usual race, right? It's not. It's the British Grand Prix. So, for anybody that might be newer to the sport, why is this track so special?
Oh man, it's like a roller coaster. It's so fast, and I think it's like a proper racetrack. Like this is a proper racetrack. I mean, if you ever come here and see it firsthand, then you'll know. You'll be like, oh yeah, okay. So this is what it's like.
Right. It goes up and down. Like there's a lot of elevation changes, right?
There's a little bit of elevation. It's not massive. There is a tiny bit of elevation. It's the speed of the corners. And they're just big guts corners. Like there's, like Maggots, Beckett's. That complex is incredible. I went for a run on this track last year, and I've driven it on the sim. I've done laps around it, but never in like obviously a Formula One car. And when you kind of get to that Maggots, Beckett's sort of complex, and you're just looking at it, and you're just like, how the hell does that work? Like, I need to see this in person, right? It's incredible, man. It's incredible. It'll blow your mind when you see them go through there. Blow your mind.
Well, I'm one of these days I'm getting out there. One of these days the hockey season is going to wrap up, and I'm going to go to the British Grand Prix, and it's going to be the first race after hockey season. So it'd be perfect. You
should, man. It's a really great event. They do a great job out here. Like it's how do I want to explain it? It's like a massive party atmosphere, and they have they have huge guests play. Like I think Kings of Leon played tonight. They have this huge stage set up on the outside of one of the corners, and it's like a Woodstock. It's crazy. And I think they had Stormzy's playing tomorrow night.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then they've got a couple of big other artists like Saturday, Sunday. I just forget who they all are, but they've got massive guests here playing. But then on track, you've got all the action, all the racing, F3, F2, Porsche Carrera Cup, GT, and then obviously Formula One. And it's fantastic. Like it's a really great event. I really think you'd like it.
Why? So I know that you're staying about an hour and a half away from the track. I hear it's a nightmare to get to or get from. Is that the reason it's an hour and a half?
No, it's like I'm in a place called Chipping Norton.
Okay.
I probably screwed.
Very British sounding name.
I'm tired. Anyways, this is where Jeremy Clarkson lives. Mm-hmm. So he literally lives like right down the road. Mm-hmm. And this is where they film Clarkson's Farm. And Clarkson's Farm is a documentary on Prime. And I'm a big fan of Jeremy Clarkson. Like I appreciate what he does. But I started watching Clarkson's Farm after I went to his farm a couple days ago. And so I'm like, okay, now I got to check this thing out. So I started watching it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is hilarious. So good. So anyways, that's where I'm staying. But it's about a 45-minute drive with some traffic. It can be close to an hour. Getting in and out of the track actually is not too bad. It depends when you go in, and it depends when you leave. Okay. Because they only have one lane of track, because they switch it to where they let traffic go one way on all 4 lanes. Mm-hmm. And for like an hour, and then they switch it back and they let it go back to normal traffic. Yeah. It's a whole thing, man. It's a whole thing here.
I bet, man. Well, there's what are they? 500,000 people there? I think they expect over the course of the weekend, something like that.
Yeah, close to it. Yeah, it's 480,000 is what they're expecting.
That's crazy. That's just a crazy amount of humanity. Yeah. Well, Tim, listen. I'm going to let you get to bed.
All right.
I'm going to let you, fix that cold of yours. I hope you have a good sleep. We're going to be following along on social media, jealously, of course, and we'll catch up after the weekend's done, my friend.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate it, man.